Welcome to Mindset Mastery Moments, the best growth mindset podcast recognized by Million Podcasts and ranked as a top mindset podcast by FeedSpot. We're proud to be in the top 1% on Listen Notes. Join Dr. Alyssa White as we explore powerful insights and strategies to elevate your mindset. Let's dive in.
Hello, disruptors, and welcome back to another episode of Mindset Mastery Moments, where we disrupt limitations and design the mindset for mastery. I'm Dr. Alyssa White, your host, of course, and today's episode is not just powerful, it's transformational. Imagine surviving 44 overdoses, a near-fatal brain injury, and still finding the courage to rebuild your mind, your purpose, and your life. My guest today is Mr. Kyle Anthony Trotman. He did exactly that. Kyle is a neuroscience-based transformational expert who's helped more than 4,000 people break free from burnout, trauma, and identity confusion. He's the founder of High Vibe Holonomics and the soon-to-be launch of the Holonomic Institute, where he combines cutting-edge neuroscience with ancient healing principles without the fluff or the spiritual bypassing. Today, we're diving into his journey from self-destruction to self-discovery and the science behind what it really takes to rewire your mind for authentic transformation. Let me tell you, I've waited a long time to sit with this young man today, and I'm just excited, Kyle, to welcome you to Mindset Mastery Moments. We are so glad you're here. Tell us in your own words who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Beautiful. Yeah, wonderful introduction. I hear young man, and then I obviously just go through the rap sheet of my past, and I was like, wow, I feel like I've lived 100 different lives.
1,000 lives.
Yeah, right. But to keep it simple, I'm just a living man doing everything I can to bring forward not only just our work, practicing holonomics, an emerging science behind flow for post-traumatic growth, and really just giving people a possibility and comprehension of what active recovery is. So we talk obviously in the fields of substance abuse disorder about what recovery is, but in flow and actually for post-traumatic growth, active recovery goes a little bit deeper than that. So yeah, that is the small gist of who I am, but why I do it is because why not? Right? If you have a story to tell and you can see people going through struggles and you know that you have a form of amplification when it comes down to the knowledge that you've been given, why not?
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Let's talk about the breakdown and go in straight into the breakthrough. Your story is both, I would say, heartbreaking and inspiring. Surviving 44 overdoses. Most people will make it through one, right? And haven't, right? Can you take us back to that period of your life? What was going through your mind before things began to change for you?
What a great question. I mean, from ages 17 to 28, um, that
Mm,
was just kind of like that hallmark period, about 11 years of going through substance abuse disorder. So it wasn't really messy by any means. It was very calculated. It was very private. Not a lot of people could see from a surface level what I was going through. But then when you start
mm,
to tally, that number 44, that's just the clinical, number. It's like how much other than that has happened. I mean, that's just a number only God knows. But what was going through my
right.
mind was my own personal identity crisis. What was my own meaning of life? If we as a collective can agree that life is inherently meaningless until we assign meaning to it, at that
Yes.
period of my time in that trajectory, specifically and where my consciousness was at, was really about
Mhm.
finding who I am and what I'm actually here to do. So the story, it sounds heartbreaking, like you said, but it's also the most liberating thing on that side as well, because, a number obviously doesn't define you. The amount of what you go through
Come
doesn't
on
define
now.
you. It's really, you surrender to what you've been given. And
Come
I've been
on.
given more times in opportunities at life than I can actually ask for. Most people can. So yeah, that
Right.
period really defined even the last 7 years, as I'm 35 now, of really devoting myself to what active recovery actually is.
Right. So tell us a little bit about what would you say is the backstory that led to the addiction And what was that pivotal moment that you knew you needed to step into a place of walking away from that for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, that is the toughest question when it comes down to what was the actual quote unquote root
It's
cause.
moment, right?
You know,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. So the beautiful part about that question is you get to reflect on the myriad of challenges that you went into understanding not only just the totality of life, but where are the origins of your own pain? Because obviously, if you can understand the origins of pain, you can really unpack what your purpose actually is on this planet. And I believe,
Right.
just in childhood, just because we do a really fantastic job within, our facilitation and within our syndication of breaking down the origins of what happened from ages 0 to 7. And then obviously that
Mhm.
being a blueprint from how you're starting to correlate your own behaviors and your own perceptions of life from these 7 types of trauma that we dive deeper into. And so I think it was
Mm,
just me wanting to know how to feel properly. I
mm,
didn't understand the concept of fully embodying what a feeling is, and no child actually does. That's something that really needs to be a nurtured process, obviously, for parents out there.
right.
So I think once I came across something that was so dopaminergic, and that just means so highly hitting on the dopamine receptors, I was just like, how do I keep doing this? And that's just what I did. And
Yeah,
I was like, wow, I can actually
right.
feel something rather than the numbness and the abuse that I went through in childhood.
Mhm.
And that was just the beginning of that. For all intents and purposes, when it came down to the origins of that, I really started to understand my own thirst for knowledge. So it was complementary outside of the addiction and the substance abuse. It really did lead me into wanting to know as much as I possibly could. So it
Good.
was a
Right.
double edged sword, but it also obviously helped create what I'm doing now.
And what you do now, exactly. And that's so incredibly powerful. And you talk about something in your work that's called energy literacy. I
Yeah.
love that term. I've never heard it until you. What exactly does that mean? And how did it begin to shape your recovery journey?
Yeah. I mean, great question. If you think about it in any type of literacy, whether it's financial literacy or any type of literacy, we have to understand the precursor to the fundamental aspects of life. So, if you look at consciousness as fundamental, because without it, we don't have life, what is the
Mm,
precursor to consciousness? It would be
right.
energy. So, now we have to look at it from a subatomic, atomic, cellular aspect, the tissue components. What are all the driving forces of energy? And I teach one-to-ones with people the 9 circuit system of how to mass produce, harmonize, restore what energy actually looks like in the system, but then also to expand it for your own creativity, your own creative work. So energy literacy just means how to dial in, harmonize, and really expand upon the output of what energy is on all aspects of science, and then also just your worldly experience.
Wow. I love it because I believe that one of the most underestimated things that I think should be a big part of our teachings in college and school is energy, the whole concept. Because emotion, energy, emotion, we are energy. That's everything about our existence is energy. And it's the one thing we don't talk a lot about. And when people start talking about it, a lot of people are like, ooh, that's that woo woo stuff. Like,
Yeah.
when I posted something about, what it is that you're created to do, what it is that you're committed to do, and how you need to be in alignment with that energetically. It triggered a bunch of people, and without naming any groups, but they all sort of kind of belong to a certain group and belief, and they're like, "What is this new age stuff?" And I'm like, "That's an issue. If you think energy is new age, you're literally challenging your own existence." But I didn't say that to them, obviously, but
That's a
that
great
was a
point.
thought I had. I was like, you're challenging your whole existence. And this is why I focus on mindset here at Mindset Master Moments and in my work. No matter what I'm doing, it all begins with thinking, because having a growth mindset is what I'm so passionate about. Because when people have a growth mindset, they are seeking information and they're challenging their own limitations, and they're challenging becoming, for me, transformation agents of bringing knowledge. When you have knowledge, that is where the power is, right? So tell us, your healing wasn't just physical, obviously, it was deeply mental, emotional, and So what moment did you kind of know, or I would say you broke into the space where you are now, and the method that you use to help other people recover?
Yeah, I mean, I love what you were alluding to earlier because the whole concept is really the definition of holonomics. In Greek, it means the whole law. And anything that is repeatable in science means law, right? So we have to
Right.
use benchmarks to be able to observe, to reverse engineer. But
Yes.
getting back to your first question, outside of the physical components, because obviously you have chemical dependency and that kickback on the neurochemistry side, but outside of the mental and emotional is more so spiritual. So when I gave my life to God, I started to really understand the power of why, I'm
Yep.
doing exactly what I'm doing. And I was always fascinated by the concept of energy ever since I was 17. And if you think about it, it's the most vague thing on the planet. So, okay, well, energy. Do you have more energy? You can see it in all the marketing and advertisement. Can you get more energy? This is an energy drink or da 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 da.
Right.
And
And
for
I was
me,
fascinated with electricity. I don't know about you.
sure, yeah, voltage, right? We
Exactly.
get
I
into
built
that
circuits
aspect.
and things. Yeah. Yes,
I love it.
exactly.
Yeah, and this is where this can get open because we can't. The new age stuff is the vibration, right? The
Right.
vibration. But it's like if we
Yes.
recognize the frequency, the oscillation, the true measurements of it, we need voltage first before vibration. So the
Yes.
restoration that came to me physically is where the
Mhm.
neurochemistry could adapt to a new hedonic adaptation. And a hedonic adaptation is just a fancy way of saying what's your baseline for your molecular structure for you to
Mm.
actually enjoy life, right? What is your
Come on.
habits? And how does
Wow.
your neurochemistry go through that process? So my recovery was more deeply spiritual than anything, right? It was a recluse period of solitude for about 3 years to really maximize what it meant to understand all the gifts that I've been given. I was also in the process of building out, this entire practice before it actually moved into a private organization. But the beautiful
Yeah.
part about that time frame in recovery is that it allowed me to really drop into faith, right? Being able to see the miracles that is every single thing in life if you start to see it from that lens. So the purpose behind, the faith was really, okay, now I can be guided. Now I can obey that guidance. And then
Yes.
you watch people just kind of flock to you because you're magnetic, right? And
Right.
and you understand really what service is at that aspect.
Either or you let ego take over, and
Sure.
so
Yeah.
service is what you choose, and you've helped thousands of purpose-driven professionals and coaches use neuroscience to break through burnout, and so I am tickled pink because I'm getting the more I do what I do with helping people build their purpose-driven career or business, these blockages right here that we're gonna talk about. What have you learned about the brain and belief systems that most people misunderstand? And you can see
Good
I'm
question.
like, I'm
Yeah.
excited because
Yeah.
I know you know,
Yeah.
and you've got a
For
lot. He's
sure.
like, "Okay, where do I go without going too deep? Take us there. It's
It's
the
true.
stage is yours."
Yeah. That's so beautiful. The one thing is understanding the concepts from the systems. The big thing that I like to allude to, because holonomics in its essence is a huge word, right? So our biggest challenge, I think, not only as a group with my team, but also myself, was how do I simplify this through the Feynman technique so I can teach this to a 5-year-old. And for
Right.
me, when it comes down to the brain, it's understanding the circuitry of systems. What are the bridges between awareness? So if we utilize this, and I might trigger a bunch of people here, but that's okay. I do that all the
Let's
time.
go for it. Trigger is where
God,
the transformation begins.
exactly. So God is awareness, right? And awareness is all that is. That's why it's omnipresent, right? So
Whew,
if you
come on.
have God as awareness, or you can just use awareness as your source of intelligence. There's 4 levels of awareness. We have conscious, right? We have subconscious. This is the part where a lot of people miss is they miss the unconscious. They
Yes.
miss the part where they think they're both the same. And then you have the superconscious. That is the life that's moving through you. So when we really level and harmonize and understand the systems in the brain for those 4 levels of awareness to work in tandem, then life, i.e., flow, which is flow for post traumatic growth or flow for anything essentially, can effortlessly move through you. So this goes in so many different directions where we're understanding the molecular structures of the nucleus accumbens, the basal ganglia, understanding the prefrontal cortex, how that works with the reticular activating system and the default mode network, how we can really understand how awareness hits each of these systems inside the brain so you can tap in and align with God at any moment if you so choose, right? That's the
Come
greatest part
on.
about free will is that we can tap in if we understand the systems, we can reverse engineer on how simple this actually is. And for
But
me, when it came down to the brain, the biggest thing that I thought, because we always like to think that we know stuff, is that when I got diagnosed with a near severance of my prefrontal cortex, I started to realize I needed to know how different portions of the systems actually work in tandem. So the
mm,
recovery process can be not even expedited, but it actually can be whole because a lot of people who don't understand the near severance between what a medial prefrontal cortex is and the connective tissues from the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala and the hippocampus, it's like tearing, your Achilles tendon inside your brain. So
yes.
you want to talk
Come
about
on.
losing your focus, you want to talk about losing your sense of who you are and your emotional regulation. I had to utilize all my frameworks for that recovery process
Come on.
because it's a 2+ year, recovery in average, and I did it in about 9 months. So utilizing
9
and
months.
understanding,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, it was crazy. It was a while. It was a lot of work in 9 months, but with understanding how the brain systems work and how they communicate to each other, taking in the concepts is a lot more easy. Now it comes into, are you going to do the work? Are you willing to sit with the sensory information, sit with the experiences that you've gone through in the past, right? Because we use 90% of our energy to suppress the emotions and energy
Emotions.
from the past. Exactly. If we can understand what systems to target, right? And then obviously drop you in to more of a parasympathetic dominant state for you to access that with your conscious awareness. This is the reason why Carl Jung always said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you'll call it fate. But
Come
you
on.
can't make yeah, you can't make anything conscious unless you focus on it. So that's we do focus
Yes.
training so you understand how to maximize the CEO of your brain, which is your prefrontal cortex, and then how to work with everything that's underneath what we call the subcortical mind that operates
Nine
99.994% of your awareness.
of your
Yep, you'll
awareness,
see
which is your existence.
100%.
I'm
And a lot of
coming to
people,
class because
yeah.
here's the thing. Everything you said, I know, but the
Hmm.
simplicity of you saying it and making this available because I want this in preschool.
Yeah, I love
I
that.
want this in preschool. There has to be a way that this is in preschool curriculums. Why? Because that's how we would raise up a generation of actual high functioning conscious beings. Think a lot of time we go with high functioning. The word high functioning usually represents people who do a lot and accomplish a lot. But I am in this season of my life, high functioning for me is people who have learned how to be a
Yeah,
lot.
beautiful,
And when I say
beautiful.
be a lot, but they're able to be in the present with themselves, with the experience, with and again, I that to me when I think about because I've been on a mission my since I was born where I want to change the world. I want world peace. And I tell people, it sounds so cliche for a lot of people. I remember someone said that's the Miss Universe answer. And I'm like, but that's really what my ambition is. Now, and that's it. That's my plain childhood. Like, I wanted people to be healed. I wanted hungry people to be fed and these things. So I say I just wanted world peace and I haven't really changed that. However, I realize I'm not responsible for bringing world peace. I'm responsible for being peace and facilitating it for as many people as I can. And I believe this is the way forward. I learned this. I was about 17 plus when I learned about the 4 stages of consciousness. And it was given to me in such a simple form, but I kept digging to it. And I always tell people you don't know what you don't know. And most of what you don't know you know it
Great
because
point.
of what you just said. The other 3 is tucked, but they're controlling most of what you do. So the only way for me in my layman's term, and I would love for you to make sure that we have it right, is you have to spend time allowing yourself learning about what you don't know. that you do know. It's such a tongue twister, though. Do you get what I'm saying?
I
So
do. Yeah.
you probably do. So walk us through an example so that our listeners and viewers can overstand and understand and sit around and have a full stance in what it is that we're telling them when it comes to those four stages of consciousness.
Absolutely. Well, one, I love the word overstand because comprehension really is everything. It's not about understanding, right? Why would you
Right.
understand something, right? And if you even take it biblical, why would you rely on your own understanding if conscious mind is only 0.006%? And I
Come
believe
on.
that's Proverbs 3. So if
Come
you
on
start to
now.
see this notion, and I wanted to go back to what you said because I love anecdoting what people know or not
Please.
know,
That's
but
what I'm
what
here
they
for.
note take is what you were saying about people being a lot, right? If we look even just as, human beings, we were given a great guideline. And I love using biblical scripture because it
Me too.
allows people
That's
to
my
see the
baseline.
simplicity of what exactly the guidance point is. And it says in Genesis, the first chapter, right? Genesis 1:27 through 28, there's a 5-point formula that says be, do, have, right? Be who you're supposed to be, do multiply, do replenish, do subdue, and have dominion, right? So when you're talking
Mhm.
about people being a lot, you have to become before the actualization of what you're trying to accomplish. You can go out and work, no doubt, no question, do those things so you can learn and you can execute. But once you become purpose driven, purpose aligned, then the doing actually becomes more so in flow. And then going back to your original question, the beautiful part about understanding the four levels of awareness or four stages of consciousness, different really iterations essentially of the same concept, but also just different spices, is that we have to teach you the mechanisms really of just what sitting looks like. Right? We're always in this constant do stuff, right? But we
Mhm.
don't actually sit with who we are. And then the
Mhm.
constructs and the frameworks, and Carl Jung called these complexes, which is obviously now in neuroscience just known as neural networks. We have to understand the unlearning process. So then we
Mm.
bring in the actual science. And Dr. Karen Purvis found that it takes on average 400 repetitions just for you to have a synaptic pathway start to develop.
Yeah.
But she also found that if you do it in a state of play, which we maximize here, that synaptic pathway is now created in 10 to 20 repetitions. So we got to teach people fundamentally how to learn, how to unlearn at the same time, actually
Mm.
have rapid skill acquisition so they can understand the power of their 0.006% conscious mind. Even though
Mhm.
it's just a pin drop in our existence, that pin drop literally has the access to everything below it. You sit down
Yes.
in simple terms, especially with kids, because they're the most malleable. When we work in this fashion of really opening up these different levels of awareness, is what is your relationship with that highest source? Whether you call it creator, universe, infinite intelligence, or God, right? If you do not know how to sit, you will not know what that guidance is, right? And
Yes.
you won't know the discernment of what God or intelligence is giving you or your own rumination from your past. So we just have to give the four basic structures so people can understand how their brain operates, where it comes from, why it operates, and then also how to move it. And we do this in a simplistic fashion by just allowing flow to be a universal consciousness. So when I sit down with one to ones, and we also have trainers that are going through certification right now, is teaching them the step by step basis of the four phases of flow. You're going to struggle, right? It's going to be hard to kind of lock in. You're going to
Ooh.
drop into a surrender point. And once you surrender, right, you're going to have consciousness catch that wave and you're going to swing into flow. And flow is literally, on a neurochemical aspect, the highest sensory experience on this planet, right? If you have group flow,
Yes.
it's the actual highest, most enjoyable component that we have specifically as humans. So now this is the
Right.
reason why we congregate in small people or in small groups. But
Yes.
then how to actively recover, which is the most important. And this is where we can talk about that aspect of burnout. But the simple gist is giving people what the metrics, also what are the mechanisms of the conscious mind so you can understand your subconscious, which is your filtration system, and then how your body houses everything. Right? And this is
Uh,
obviously the renowned work where you get into the body keeps the score and stuff like that. But now it's talking about how have you designed those first three levels of awareness so God can just speak through you. And if you're yielded, right, if you obey by that word, then you can actually go into the deeper aspects of what service is. And to me, there's no other greater feeling on this planet than giving to other people because
Come on.
whatever you give is going to be given upon to you. That's just the law of
Yes.
reciprocity. Very
It's
simple.
yes.
I think on as I dive into this and really kind of come to a baseline of comprehension for people, one they just
Mm-hmm.
need to know those four levels and the mechanisms and the systems that run them, and then how to access that, and then it's communication, communication, communication. We get
Communication.
clear, we get clear specifically on where you want to go. We derive the coherence so you can understand how the brain and heart move together. You have
Yes.
consistency because that is queen, right? Execution is king, but consistency is queen. And then we
Come
just give you a
on.
community of
That's the
accountability.
masculine and feminine energy. Keep talking. Yes.
Yeah. So, and then we just round it out with, a structure of community because we have seen not only in the studies, but also through learning when you're in an accountability structure, excuse me, you actually learn and unlearn faster, right? Because people are in
Yes.
that process with you. So what we did is we mastered caring for people so they can understand their brain and understand where things are coming from.
Yes.
But then we also mastered the rapid skill acquisition and the unlearning process simultaneously. So you're literally growing at exponential speed.
Yeah. That's so fascinating. Kyle, I suffered a brain injury around the age of 14 or 15. Had the diagnosis was damaged tissues around my brain, and the prognosis was indefinite. They didn't know if I was going to make a full recovery. I suffered silent seizures. I had a full memory loss. I had to relearn everything, relearn to talk, relearn all things. It was a from my hindsight 2020 vision, I did end up having a therapist. Kevin Trudeau had a program that was bought for me that helped me to retrain my brain faster back in the days. I don't remember what it was called. It's been so long ago. But apparently, in some ways, I became sharper. And that's a lot of people. I know that I might have mentioned it a few times on the podcast. But if anyone understands, this is why I'm so, unashamedly hyper focused on mindset, because mindset is way more than just thinking. A lot of people think, well, Elise is talking about being positive. She's talking about having a growth mindset. It goes deeper. This is why we have individuals like Kyle come on the show, because this is what setting of the mind includes. It's not just think positive thoughts. That is the setting of the mind is brain retraining your brain. And so, Kyle, I am going to have to come to class with you because the thing about it, I've been doing, and that's why they call me the mindset disruptor. It's because behind my work is how to practically put tools in your toolbox to be literally, like if I had to break it down, to be, to connect with your purpose, your true values, but core beliefs, and then walk in your purpose. But I first thing I made was think, speak, do, become, because it flows that way for me. But I make it simple so you can use it. But for those who are going to lead in this next phase of the earth, right? We need to understand. For those who are going to bring transformation, we need to know this. We need to do this. And Kyle has done the work. He has actually done what he said earlier. You talked about the becoming. This is why 44 overdoses. This is why what is it? A brain aneurysm. I don't want to missell it because it's all part of the journey. You went through these things so you can. And if you ask me, you are a living, reading example of your work. If you did not go through those things, you probably wouldn't be doing this for the world today. So for someone who's listening, I'm going to say to you, and then Kyle's going to say it in his way. Wherever you are right now, whatever your struggle looks like, however dark it is, there's purpose in it. Kyle, what should they do? They're suffering. Maybe they're dealing with addiction. Maybe that's who is listening us right now because they saw this somewhere or they Google something and this episode pop up, speaking to their lives right now.
Well, suffering, and the first thing I can say is optional, right? The struggle phase in flow, a fundamental, aspect of consciousness, is part of the avoidant and engagement phase in life. Like as you're trying to get acquainted with something, or you're trying to adopt, say, a new mindset, or get really kind of inside a new environment, there's going to be a struggle there, right?
Yeah.
But suffering is optional, and that's the perceptive lens. So the one thing that I can share with anybody going through any tough times is that there is something more benevolent that's running in the background that loves you more than your mom, right? And if you can tap into that just with some simple mechanistic techniques, you can really start to understand why your life is so important. Because I love when people read the quote unquote rap sheet. It's like, that's just all glory to God. Like, I didn't really do anything, right? I just paid attention. So, the beautiful part about where you may be is that every single thing is temporary and all is change. Things are constantly changing all the
Yes.
time. So the
Yes.
choice and the PowerPoint that you have is really just aligning yourself and just jump. Like if you think for 1 second that you are not a miracle and the chances of you just coming into this existence is not a miracle, then we have to just shift the perspective, because perspective drives your performance. Like you literally are a living, breathing miracle, right? The chances of you just
Mm.
being here is insane. So if we give you the anecdotal data and give you the observational research that shows how amazing you are, you can actually start to look at yourself differently. And
Come
then it's just
on.
about rewriting the past. And that stuff is really what I focus on, is because when you can start to see that most of what you think you are and who you are isn't even you, then you can really start to understand the miracle that is you. So yeah, if you're out there struggling, realizing that suffering is optional, it's a choice, right?
Yeah.
There's people, there's resources that are here to help you, and you have that benevolent intelligence, i.e., God, in my perspective lens, that loves you more than your mom. So tap into that.
Oh my gosh. We could wrap. Struggle is optional, people. And I'm telling you, I have found, I guess it's a blessing of growing older. It absolutely is. And every time I'm struggling, it has been a choice. There's stuff happening. And this is why I use the term so frequently. Life is going to life, because it's occurring, whatever. There's people doing, there's stuff moving, there's stuff not moving. But how you are is what you choose, like literally. So let's just say I just lost my job. There's probably another 10 million people that just lost their job. Same hour, even down to the seconds that I do, possibly. It may be less, but there's other people who did, even if it's just one other person. They could be going home and saying, finally, I'm out of there. Now I get to work on my dream. Now I have more time. Now finally, I'm going to look for that new position. Finally, I'm going to put my application to this company I've always wanted to work for. And I could come home and be like, oh my God, I fail. What am I going to do? The difference between us, someone say, well, he could probably think that way because he has money. There's no
Yes.
comparison. There is no
Right.
comparison. We all get to choose, understand. And this is why tapping into the other 3 stages of what's behind you is what Kyle is giving you. Because once you have that awareness of who you are and what you are and why you are, it changes everything. Just look at the like he said, 44, like I'm going back to his thing, 44 overdoses, he's still here. But he could have decided to be here and try to have 45th, 46, 47, or he could have made a choice to, recover and marry and have his kids and maybe live off the coast of Africa and just, work a regular job, whatever. But instead, he decided to deliver transformation and do at 100% everything he possibly can to live his purpose. Because I do believe it's because of your calling. That's why, the resistance was there with all these occurrences. It was supposed to, in my opinion, sharpen you, because I could say, oh, it was supposed to take you out. It was supposed to kill you so you never bring the message. But I'm also believing it was supposed to sharpen you so you become focused, so you can walk this path and bring this to revelation, bring high vibe holonomics to reality. So here's the question I have for you that I love, love, love. You talk about it's called spiritual bypassing. And that is something our audience will resonate with. How do you see people using spirituality to avoid real inner work?
Man, this is the easiest
Because
question
that
ever.
you
The
get so
people that just
excited
go
and
to
I
church.
can't wait. Yes,
The
come
people that
on.
just go to church and don't do anything. You know, it's
Come
just they're
on.
and this is and because I'm not quote unquote the prototypical, Christian. Like I am a follower of
I'm not
Christ, but I also
not
swear,
anymore. I'm a
I
follower of Christ. Yes.
yeah, exactly. So there's a redefinition in a lot of revivals with people, but the spiritual
Mhm.
bypassing is you can just hear, especially when you're really attuned and you are aligned, you can just hear the spiritual gupta that people talk about. And the funny part about the spiritual bypassing, the notion of high vibe, when we were formerly known as high vibe healing, and it was a tongue-in-cheek name to literally poke fun at the new age movement that was just clouding the spiritual and growth development because it's just all this feel good, feel good, feel good, think positive. And I'm like, yo, it's bullshit. Like it's just
Yes.
like
Absolute bullshit.
that notion of of feelings only and this stuff like this. It's like conflict is that resolve is what makes you authentic because it understands your attachment. And then you go back to childhood and realize, cool, everything wasn't all feel good. You were just expressive in your authenticity. So the
Mm.
spiritual bypassing for me, as I see it, not only just in society, it's people that cover up the pain that you can see literally in their eyes and also in their body language
Come on.
about these concepts that they're not actually embodied, right? That's the reason
Mm.
why it's called embodied, right?
Mm.
You can tell, especially if you've worked in a facilitation or you've been a wellness practitioner, you can tell by just somebody's body language that they are
Yes.
just full of it. And if
Full
they
of
just
it.
start talking about stuff that they've just read, they're literally now passing something. And that's just the definition of spiritual bypassing. Oh, I read this book. Now
Yes.
here, read it because I know that's right. Right. And it's like, no, you don't. You don't actually know that that's right because you haven't practiced
You
it. There's no
haven't practiced it.
implementation.
Come
Yeah, so
on.
the people that show up on a consistent basis, right? They show up and you can see that there is a reliability attribute to them. You know that they are actually in the mix. They are not letting excuses. They're not letting any quote unquote victim mentality take away from their actual walk, their journey,
Woo.
their energetic path. So the beauty that I find in just answering most simple questions, all you have to do is being like, okay, well, let's go to church. And now let's go see what that person is now doing in the shadow in private, right? Let's see the difference, right? Because whatever you do in private will be made public.
Come
You're
on.
sharpened in the darkness. So the people that are just out here when this is all celebration time, don't get me wrong, praise, worship, love it, especially the music portion. But
Yes.
what you're doing in private, what you're doing in the shower, what you're doing before you go to sleep, what you're doing
Come
literally when
on.
no one's
One's
watching,
watching
that's what
you.
exactly, because God's always watching, that's for sure.
Come
So
on.
what really helps me, especially with people in the spiritual bypassing, is not it's about implementation over everything,
Come
right? You
on.
don't need any more generalized knowledge. You need specific knowledge so you can take action and doing that in a ritualistic standpoint for yourself. So the private version of yourself now becomes fully representable in the public eye as well.
Exactly. My goodness.
Yeah.
And that is why I'm guessing in my journey over the last 5 years, it's been harder for me. I haven't been to church in 5 years. No, I went the other day because one of my, one of the youngest in our family, he got christened. So I went to church that day and I enjoyed it and stuff, but I am not a church. I would say there's preacher's kids and then there's me. The next thing best to being a preacher's kid. I was the first to be baptized, to be christened in our church. We when it first opened, all the things like we were the church, right? I opened the doors, I cleaned, I led the choir, I taught Sunday school, I did visiting, I did prayer meetings, I did Bible study. I was there every day, all day. I moved to the US, same thing. And then finally, as I stepped into just growing and becoming more focused on God, why am I really here? It cannot be about me just, yeah, I'm helping a lot of people, but why do I feel so dissatisfied? Why do I feel so inauthentic and sort of confused and lost? And I'm like, I need answers. I need it. And the more I connect, it became more challenging. And I'm guessing now I have an explanation for it. It's the spiritual bypassing. Because as a child, I read the word of God. I just needed to go to become a pastor. I did my degree in biblical studies, my bachelor's degree in biblical studies like 10, 15 years ago. All of that only because I wanted to read the Bible. I thought I was missing something. There were a lot of things that weren't answered. So that was my search, right? And I was a child who asked my mom, if God made the heaven and the earth, who made God? And I had these questions, right? I'm like, okay, so
Yeah.
if Jesus healed the woman at the well and he told Mary, I know you and go and sin no more when she was an adulterous woman, literally prostitute, why are we putting people out of the church because they got pregnant? I was the one who had all these questions, right? So I imagine now being in my early 30s and seeing all this stuff and like questioning it. And it wasn't I was like, no, I know who God is. I know who God is, but something's missing about what we say and what we do. And why are some of the people who struggle to get emotionally healed and forgive, like really forgive or pick themselves up and move on? They're always waiting on God. They're praying, they're in church all the time, but they're not their situation doesn't change. It's the spiritual bypassing, and I couldn't watch it anymore. And the deeper I go into my healing and moving into a space of transformation and peeling away at the layers that would have built up, it's like I can't co-sign it. But I love them. I love you. I love God. I love church, but I can't spend all this time staring at this stuff. What do you say to a Christian who, like me, right? There's right now, that's their struggle. They didn't know it. Now they hear it. It's because you're evolving and growing spiritually. You're not moving away from God. Talk to them. Talk to them.
That what I love what you said about the co-signing, that notion where it's like I can't attribute my energetic signature, to a
Oh,
system. So this right here, this is the hallmark of not only just what we do, is also the questions, because you're asking, what about this? I love that you said, okay, well, who made God? It's like I had the exact same thought when I was 12. And I was like, okay, well, okay, this Bible makes sense. This is a great guidance point. All
yes.
right, there's a lot of missing links here. Like, well, what's up with
Come
my
on.
curiosity? But then I found, obviously, throughout our work and really diving into that, you have intrinsic motivators. These are things that are divinely given to you. So for me, I found, speaking to a Christian and really anybody, that
Mhm.
transformation is a trap. This is why our process
Mm.
is called education to liberation. When you are
Ooh,
liberated, then you stop asking all the whys of the world, because those are
come
still
on.
systems of enslavement. Liberation means you are now literally autonomous. This is the reason why I believe in the notion of anarchy, right? And properly defined anarchy, because people don't know what the actual definition is. It's actually very peaceful, and treating
Mm.
this process like it's a sacred journey, right? So if you're Christian,
Yes.
if you're Muslim, if you're, whatever, like, are
Right.
you liberated from the constructs of the systems that have been put upon you? And this is what a lot of people call oppression, right? If
Come
you
on.
have a system that is defining your identity, you are a slave, right?
Yes.
That is
Woo.
just the truth. And if you are, because I can get deep in on this beyond the neuroscience, but when you are fundamentally confined to a doctrine of any kind,
Mm.
and you literally identify with that, right? Always remember, when you say I am, you are identifying with God. That's just literally God presenting to Moses. So it doesn't matter what you say after I am, you have to identify with God first, right? So this is why God
Yeah.
is the ultimate authority, not a religion. That's a control
Come
based
on.
system, not a government. That's a control based system, right?
Yes.
What are the notions of transformation? Transformation is just behavior change. Liberation is spiritual movement, moving through you without any doctrines, without any enslaved
My
system.
gosh.
And what I love about Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who's the godfather of flow, the grandfather of flow, excuse me, he says, to be free, you need to be liberated from the systems outside of yourself. And that's what we call autonomy.
Ooh.
And that's an intrinsic motivator. So if you value liberation and freedom, which have slight different definitions, but if you value that amongst God, then your definition by life needs to go against the systems that have been put upon you by the
Whew, whew. Question: are some of us just born that way?
what a great deep dive.
I
Honestly,
just want to know what your thoughts are. I know
I
that's
think
yeah.
one of my favorite quotes is that when you are anointed and blessed, they will come for you. Right. And when you sit down with scripture and you realize the hatred that you can see in the world, or you can see even that you may
Mm,
have had towards yourself, you realize that they hated Christ first. And so now,
yes.
if you see this in that notion, right, the anointed now will come to, right, that freedom and that liberation just by the offset of just what doesn't make sense. Well, if you look at the quantum mechanics, we are in a paradox, right? We're in the world of senses, but most of this stuff doesn't make sense. So we have to go internal, and that's the kingdom of heaven is where
Yes.
it's within, right? So, and
Yes.
then that's the law of
Yes.
correspondence because as within, so without. So
So without.
if we follow the obedience of divine law and natural law, then I firmly believe you will naturally become more anarchist in your disposition. You want to be peaceful and you
Yeah.
want to self govern yourself. And we just teach that
Mm,
people how to do that and how to really practice it. But are people born with it? I believe somewhere deep down in our genomic code, we get a little like sprinkle of miracle that says, "Hey, this is what you're gonna do,"
right.
possibly.
Right.
But obviously, there's no verification of that. But
Right.
subjectively,
That's
how I
our
would see it,
subjectively.
I
That's
think
yeah.
people are born with a specific gift of seeing things differently in the world.
That's why I asked. I just kind of because that's my in my evolution, in my liberation.
Mm,
There's something that just like you said, we don't have a necessarily base for it. It's just that's what I believe inside of me, and it works, right? So
right.
one other thing before we do flip the script, I appreciate that you blend science and humanity. Of course, you've proven transformation again, and I love that we're actually veering away from transformation into liberation. It isn't mystical, really. It's measurable, which is I've never heard it but when I saw that that's what you talk about, I was like, "That makes sense." So what does that process actually look like when someone works with you, going through what we would call commonly transformation, but you're really facilitating liberation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's different on a one-to-one aspect with me than it is kind of more in our group setting. But when you're working with me one-to-one, we have to understand, your circuitry, right? Because for your vibration, right, to elevate, you have to have voltage inside the being. This is where electricity actually starts to really knock on the door of what's, the potentiality of your energetic signature. So we really kind of dive into what's keeping you enslaved specifically from your cells communication. How is that actually working? But when you're coming into a group aspect, what are you identifying with? Right? When we go through a core belief assessment, what are you saying after I am that is keeping you enslaved to the past? Right? And then this is where we get into the synaptic gains when it comes down to memory work. And we find that the window of reconsolidation gives you a small little period of time where any memory is malleable to change the emotional charge. And if we
Mhm.
provide where people are at, we can see where you're stuck in the past. And if you are stuck in the past, literally by proxy and definition, you are a slave to the past, right? And this is where
Right.
I really, really reverse engineered what addiction is because what does it start with first? It starts with a sensory experience, then it's all
Yes.
memory. So
Right.
now
Right.
we have to look at the influences that are really being put upon you that actually promote that emotional aspect. So when I sit down with people, we got to see through the nine circuits what is actually happening so we can restore, harmonize your energetic potential, then build upon it, and then expand on what that means. And then when you're coming into a group setting, we have to see, are you in a massively transformative process or are you in a massively transformative purpose? Those are just known as the two different aspects of NTPs because we have to transform the behavior for you to liberate the system, right? So transformation is a part of the hierarchy of our spiritual climb. But once you're liberated, you really have this kind of dialed in for yourself. But when I work with individuals, I really just being like, hey, what is your clarity? What are you actually seeking for? And let's get specific. I don't just want more energy or I don't want to just feel better. These are big, right? We want to give you a specific desired end result so we can really paint that picture because the law of repetition with the law of association, the two governing laws of consciousness, says that if we do it enough times and we imprint it properly, the law of consciousness says this has to be reality. It's fundamental, it's natural, it's law.
Yes.
So we have to
Yes.
get specific on what you want so we can understand what is your process or what is your purpose. And then
Mhm.
when we go through that, we can really understand how to rewrite the energetic signature within the person.
Well, I love it. So I want to talk a little bit about business with
Sure.
you. You have something that's called a 94% close rate and outcomes, right? It's just amazing to see how neuroscience and healing really can come together. I'm still processing what you just told us to
Yeah, yeah, sure.
rebuild, yeah, to rebuild in a place of purpose. So I have a group of entrepreneurs or people who are now stepping into the entrepreneurial realm. Talk to us about how you achieve that, in your own practice, that using that 94% close rate.
Beautiful. The 94% came from a trajectory run that we got to do a couple of years ago, and then obviously the brain injury. We took a little slide back for about 18 months to really focus on our students and the development of the Holonomic Institute. But it's just how you're presenting the solution, right? Not talking specifically just about the problem. Obviously, the sales aspect is massive in business, but what's really most important is the solution within the sales, right? Are you selling with soul? Are you truly giving people an opportunity to see the solution? Are they seeing it within themselves first? And when you can literally manufacture the proper language to speak to the soul, and I know that sounds a little manipulative, but that's, the true aspects because we're building and we're developing, but
Yeah.
we're selling to the soul for that person to guarantee their end result. So I'm not so privy on the pride notion of 94% close rate. I'm more so on the 97% success rate that we have within our clients.
Come
That to
on.
me is meaning we are actually speaking to the soul. And I believe anybody that has come into our facilitation understands that we have max capacity for caring for people. And that's what they're really looking for. When you're trying to or attempting to, I will work on getting the word try out of my vocabulary at all times.
Right, I've been working on it forever. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
catch
beautiful.
myself.
But when people come into our facilitation, they can tell that they are cared for. And that the negligence, especially when we're going into the new age of technological advancements and automation, most people feel so disconnected from just their own being and the world. So when they come into our facilitation, that is where I really start to see where our care for not only just our students and clients start to take over and that selling aspect comes
Yes.
up. Absolutely.
Phenomenal. Second thing, I remember when I created my mindset transformation program, it started with, and that was earlier or in the earlier days, it was number one, healing from hurt and past trauma, and then reframing and repositioning yourself through your values and belief systems, connecting with your purpose, and just creating a roadmap to what your life is going to look like, not going into career planning or business development. And I was told people are not going to buy that. And I'm like, why? Because people need transformation, they need to heal, they need to recover, they need to change their mindset. But when you sell it like that, they're not going to see it. There got to be something that connects to something, and I'm like, connect to what? Well, and I talk about it, either relationships or their money. And I'm like, tell us, give me some feedback on how you see that. And as a business professional, how would you guide the listeners who they literally want to just help people recover from addiction or just want people to change their mindset? That's what they want to focus on. They don't want to do any other of those other stuff. They don't want to work through them having a difficult relationship. They don't want to work through them losing 20 pounds. They just want to do the foundation. How do you, first of all, is what I was told, what do you think about it? Do you think that has some validity to it? And then how do you speak into building your brand and business around offering people real life transformational tools and not necessarily helping them build a better relationship, a better brand, or a better school, or whatever it is.
I mean, it definitely has validity to this notion where it's like, okay, you're not going to make a ton of money if you're just selling transformation and mindset stuff like this. It's really about delivery. What are you
Right.
communicating? Because how you're communicating and what you're communicating really gives the emphasis on why a person would ever want to be with you or work with you or ever want to give you a dollar for that.
Right.
But what I've learned, since we developed in 2016 and I've been in practice since 2014 is that if you truly believe in everything that you're doing, you'll start to see your work as your own worship, right? And you'll obviously give that over to a higher benevolence. When you make it
Mm,
egotistical, you will burn out. And there's a mythical definition behind burnout too that I could always dive into. But when it comes into what you're really giving and offering to the world, that's got to be a guiding calling. You got to
yeah.
be all in with it. So if you're all in with it, that means your relationship, right? That means the difficulties that come from any aspect of your seven dynamics, any of the things that are around you. So for people that want to do just the foundational work without taking care of anything else, now we can go back to spiritual bypassing. Now you're just bypassing without just the spiritual aspect of it.
Yes.
You can't have one without the other, right? In
Come
an
on.
all inclusive notion, if you're all in, right? Those are the only people that I work with because why
Come
would you want
on.
to work with people who are sitting on the fence? Right? If you're all in, that is your relationships, that is your finances, right? That is your emotional and mental integrity, that is your spiritual walk, right? Whatever that may be. So for people that just want to do the foundational work, like the foundation is going to set you up for everything else that you do anyway. So you might as
Yeah.
well just have the totality of experience. And one of my favorite classes that we teach or teach in Conscious College, which is one of our main aspects of our curriculum, is literally the totality of experience. How are you having joy in it all? How can you fundamentally develop joy in having it all? And for me, I find more joy in difficulty than I do in just the leisure stuff. So anybody that's willing to do the foundations and just really do it, they're just the people who are just feel gooders. It's like I just want to feel
Right.
better from my
It
past.
just
And I
passed.
was like, okay, well then
And then what?
what's the point? Exactly. Right. You see a
You
different
sit there and be a
fire
fat cat?
into a right, exactly, right? And well, then you're just a consumer, and you can see that in 90+% of the world is just we're
Come
just
on.
consuming what we need to
Or
be
we're just,
producing and
yeah, we buy all
exactly.
this stuff. I'm like, why do, and I slipped into a more minimalist. Number one, I didn't have a lot of money after my divorce, but I realized after my divorce, I didn't need all the things I had. I just was told that it's a good thing to have. So I got
Yeah.
it.
And there's the history of influence, right?
Right.
That's programs the reticular activating system to just consume, 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 right?
Yes.
Give you more dopamine. And then you're like,
It's
well, after
That's
you
why
have
I
so
say
much
addiction
dopamine,
is none of us
it's all
are
energetic. Yeah.
none of us are like I look at people and be like, yeah, he's a drug addict. And I'm like, yeah, what are you addicted to? I met people who are addicted to Jesus and the concept of Jesus, addicted to church and the concept of church. I met people who are addicted to movie, people are addicted to porn, people are addicted to work, people are addicted to getting their nails done, people are addicted to always looking perfect. The addiction exists because dopamine is we're we go to an alternate route of getting those senses going. But let's face it, I hit my dopamine spots by sitting here and unlocking and breaking and facilitating conversations. But it's the risk of what I'm going to get, what I get in return will continue long after I'm gone. Right. And for me, that's the difference. Doesn't make it better, but that's the difference from maybe an addiction that I have, which is writing and creating. That sometimes if I don't check it, again, that's the addiction is how does it affect you? Are you way too much into one thing that doesn't allow you to do the thing that you're put on this earth for? And that's when you come back and have a conversation with us about
Yeah.
that.
That's
Where we
conversation
go,
too.
yeah, that's conversation too. Let's talk about who you ideally work with at High Vibe and give us a little bit of preview about the Holonomic Institute that's coming up next
Yeah.
year.
Beautiful. Well, actually, the High Vibe Holonomic, the Holonomic Institute actually launched our preliminaries in July. So we're actually fully outfitted right there. We just actually had class last night. So that's,
Congratulations.
and yeah, thank you. It's one of the coolest things to witness people just show up consistently on Monday calls, Tuesday calls, Wednesday calls, Thursday calls, Friday calls. It's really, really awesome. And also just, shout out to my team while I'm on this call because just beautiful group of individuals that really bring in their own skill set.
Yes.
The notion of high vibe holonomics, it's really just where you're at. So who I work with are people that are really trying to elevate their business game, right? Because obviously your
Mhm.
energetic potential is going to be the driving force, obviously, for business owners and entrepreneurs. You need all the energy you could possibly muster to run a business, especially nowadays where everything can
Yes.
feel
Oh
claustrophobic or
my
feel
gosh. Yes.
saturated. We need it more than ever. So those individuals that are looking to elevate their game, I'm looking for the Kobe Bryants, the Michael Jordans, the best of the best, right? Where it's just like, hey,
Yes.
you're going to take guidance and we're going to do this. We're going to be in the trenches, right? I'm right next to you, shield to shield kind of stuff. But when people
Yes.
come into a group setting, these are people that are getting introduced to change work. They're getting
Mm,
introduced to the people that need more, possibly of the hand holding, need more of the accountability, and need more of the connective points for people working in groups. So it really depends on where you're at. And it's not to say I'm not all inclusive, but when I work one to one, trust me, you're going to have to match a specific energy because the challenge of working with an individual is you got to have benchmarks and standards that are requirements. They're not just wants and desires,
come
right?
on.
So they're at a purpose level. They're on a deeper purpose. Most people that come into a group level, they're developing a process to becoming who they are. So then they know how to execute to the next
To the
level.
next
So
level.
exactly.
Perfect. Awesome. What is success? How do you define success now in your life?
Breathing. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. Anytime that I find myself in a challenge, or you can call it a rut or a mental funk or whatever, which is very rare these days, I get to drop into that heart space, and I just know that's the seed of the soul. And I'm like, this thing's still going.
Yeah.
After, substance abuse disorder, all the stories, I get to breathe. That's success for me. So I have a different look at it, but I would say the caveat and possible second definition to success is seeing other people smile because they're doing the work.
Exactly. Oh,
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah.
Kyle, everyone knows that you have to be back. They're like, I know Dr. Lisa's not done with this conversation because we touched on a few things that need to go deeper. But everyone
Yeah.
listening and watching us wants to know, what is your favorite way to connect with them? Connect with them, yeah.
Yeah, the easiest is just this is very rare for people to say in the DMs. Just go to Facebook, hit me up on Messenger. I'm super, super available in my time blocks when I reach out to people. I like more of that type of connection than anything. Obviously, we have our other aspects of Instagram and Facebook too, but I can kind of guide you from what you're looking for. But if you're looking to get started in this process, or just want to connect on any aspects of how I can plug you into just free resources, I just reach out.
Yes, you can catch him. It's Kyle A. Trotman on Facebook. And then we, of course, have his website in the description and his Facebook link and his social media links. Like, I mean, very few people. I tell you, DM me, but just be patient. But Kyle says DM him and he will respond. His website, if you want to learn more about High Vibe Holonomics, you can go to highvibeholonomics.com and get connected with the Institute. I'll be checking out and talking to Kyle, and he'll be back on Mindset Mastery Moments. But Kyle, you have been such a phenomenal guest. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your science with us today. You've shown that healing isn't about perfection, it's about persistent awareness and alignment. To our listeners, if today's conversation moved you, make sure to connect with Kyle. DM him, let him know that you heard him here on Mindset Mastery Moments, and keep in touch with us for when he's going to be back on the podcast. Kyle, is there anything you want to say to us before we go?
I just thank you for just allowing me to grace this platform, and just anybody that's out there in the trenches right now. I mean, there is no better time than just to activate your life. So yeah,
Yeah.
peace and love,
And
for sure.
and don't forget that suffering is a choice.
Mhm.
That is that's
Absolutely.
marching orders. Once you think that, you think of Kyle and you're like, okay, let me just connect with him and see where I go from here because I want to choose differently. So remember, no matter what you've been through, transformation, liberation is not only possible, it is your birthright. Keep mastering your mindset. Think, speak, do, become. I'm Dr. Lisa, your number one mindset disruptor. This has been another episode of Mindset Mastery Moments. See you all soon. Bye now.